Hey y'all, welcome to the Gamble Ramble vlog. With you as always is myself, host and creator, chief cook and bottle washer, Glenn Archie Gamble. I am a career musician from London, Ontario, Canada, halfway between Toronto and Detroit. And I've been in the industry for 43 years, over 40 years. Started playing professionally in nightclubs at 15, and I've had varying levels of success and fame, as you can see by these awards and things behind me. I've played with club bands, cover bands, tribute bands, cruise ship bands, recording bands. I played festivals to 30,000. I've played bar mitzvahs to 30. So essentially, it's been a 40-plus year career in music, and I've seen a lot of different things over the years. And I love rock and roll, and I use this as an outlet to discuss the things I love, and sometimes the things I don't love, so we can talk about, keep it well-rounded, talk about all kinds of things. So I'm feeling very professional today. I got some new actual professional lighting, and I have a stand for my iPhone, which is still my camera, but I love the quality and the ease of editing. I do everything on the phone. But hopefully, if you notice a difference in the professionalism of the lighting and whatnot, let me know in the comments. And if you're new here, by the way, welcome to our little piece of the internet. I appreciate your support. If you're a returning Rambler, thanks a lot for coming back. And to all of you, I say, please subscribe if you haven't. It helps me out a ton. You push the button below. It's very simple. It's free, and it helps me move forward with the channel. The more viewings I get, the more subscribers I have, the more successful the channel becomes. So as I said, we talk about rock and roll and pop culture and things I love, and that you hopefully love too. And it's funny because I am also a fan of YouTube. I watch more YouTube than I do any other, even Netflix or anything else. Any other form of, I don't even have terrestrial television. I have a television behind me over here, but I don't have cable. YouTube's my to-go-to thing. And one of my favorite channels on YouTube is the Billy Corgan channel. Billy Corgan, the singer for Smashing Pumpkins. It's called The Magnificent Others with Billy Corgan, where he interviews celebrity musicians and people within the industry, sometimes actors too, I believe. It's a really interesting microcosm. It's a really cool program. Billy's a smart, knowledgeable guy. He has a tendency to, people laugh about it. We love him, but in the comments, he turns to let, oh, look. The most recent one would be he interviewed Rick Springfield recently, who's legendary, and, oh, look, it was nice of Billy to let Rick Springfield interview him, because he tends to kind of sometimes turn it around about himself. But at the same time, he's getting better at it. I just watched something new today, which is what I'm going to get to in a second. And he is listening. You can tell that they're haters. People are reading the comments, because the one we're going to talk about today was recently filmed in the last week or so. And you can tell he's reading the comments, and he's holding back on interrupting as much and making it about himself. So, but at the same time, it must be hard to be Billy Corgan, because he has a fan base of his own, and I'm sure that there are people who are tuned in because they want to hear what Billy Corgan has to say about anything. They're there to watch Billy Corgan. I am, definitely to a point anyway, But he's definitely a good interviewer, and I think that he's starting to polish off the rough edges, smooth the rough edges, and he's getting better at it. So what is this all about? Well, it's all about the most recent chapter of the Magnificent Others, episode that just dropped 8 hours ago, which is an interview with Yungblud. Dom Harrison, the beloved rock and roll singer from Doncaster, England, 27 years old, 28 now, I believe. And Billy is a fan, you can tell. They both appeared together at the Black Sabbath Back to the Beginning concert. They talk about that in this. So what I'm going to do is I've watched this, and I've broken it down into different sections and talked about it. And what this is going to be, though, is this is going to be part one of a two-part series, because the interview with Yungblud is 55 minutes and 30 seconds long. So if I talk, if you add in my, version of how things are going and my review of it and my reactions, it's going to be a 4-hour video. So we'll do the first half. We're up to about the first 30 minutes or so. And I've broken it down into a few different little topics and sections. And we will react to them in real time. I'll put the clips in here and then talk about what we've just seen afterwards.
I don't know. It's almost been like a manifestation to what has happened within this album and this tour. I think like I made an album really about reclaiming oneself and really doing what I wanted. You know, I think
Funny
I
how
really
that
went
works,
home.
right? Like it's working.
Huh?
And it works.
Yeah. Yeah, and it worked. Honestly, I think it's so creative. It was so serendipitous that we're doing this because I really remember feeling quite at a crossroads in my life when I hit 27. And I really, Idols was an album that I've been envisioning since I was 22 years old, you know? And I really remember seeing you say something about me on the Ali Hagendorf podcast. I remember you talking about my voice. And I honestly, you were such a massive part of that turning point because I think when you, I don't know, I think when you like look at your idols, like someone like you to me, I think kind of when you know them on a personal level and when they talk about you, you have kind of, before that, you have no point of reference. All you have is yourself, your friends, your record company, the people around you. But when you hear someone you look up to and an idol you look up to go like, I think it's time for him to sing. And I think it's time for him to do a rock album. I think it's time for him to lean into really what he wants to do because I see this thing, but it's not quite linked up yet. I literally was like, oh, finally. I feel like I can really lean into what
I
I was
didn't know.
kind of
I didn't know that. So I'm very touched that
100%. I remember going up home and going, look at this. It is time. It hit me in the face like a comet, right in in between my eyes. Because I think what's been interesting is I've been doing this since I was 18, and you never expect for people to even care at the start. You love it, you believe it, and then the whole world suddenly gets involved and has an opinion. And for so long, people have been telling me to twist the idea of rock music instead of just really just go for it in its purest form that I fell in love with it with. And then good old Billy Corgan goes, I wish you'd just sing that. And then I'm like, and then I was like, okay, let's go. And I think this whole journey really has been so beautiful because I've settled into the first iteration of what I believe I will be doing for the rest of my life.
Yeah.
The music, the journeys I'll be taking for the rest of my life, you know?
Yeah. So the first section here that I would just put in is from about the 3 minute 30-second mark after they do the introductions and so on and so forth. And it's how Dom Yungblud is talking about how he's been wanting to record this record for years and about how rock and roll and this type of music is what he sees himself doing for the rest of his life and his build up to getting to this point. You know, I think it's really interesting, and I think that it's authentic. I think he's really telling the truth. I think he is honest in that he favors, at least, this kind of music. You know, we've touched on this before in other Yungblud videos and discussions that we've had. He's still a really young guy, you know. If you're like me, I'm 57 years old. Have you changed since you were 27? Well, of course you have. I have. And I mean, how old was Dom when he put out his first records? 18 or something. So the changes between 18 and 28, which he is now, I think, are incredible. That's a decade. Stop and think about that for a second. How many changes you yourself went through. And if you're only 18 and watching us, think about the changes you went through from 8 to 18, right? 18 to 28. 28 to 38. I mean, it's inevitable. And, you know, as an 18-year-old in the earlier kind of emo, pansexual, you know, gender-free kind of image he put across, I think I'm not doubting the sincerity of it, but I think it was probably where he was at that time as a young person, and also probably management and the label and himself taking a look around and going, which horse should we ride? You know, people don't realize when you do an album, or people may not realize, it's all part and parcel. You don't just record music and put it out. there's a marketing plan that has to be put together by the record company. And that means everything from a cohesive logo for your name and your album title, cover artwork, that remains consistent into advertisements, promotional swag, concert swag, backstage passes, the staging. It's all tied together. There's always a theme with the record, okay? So their stuff was definitely a lot more, I think maybe, I wouldn't say deliberate, but partially deliberate. I think that maybe Dom and his people were kind of going for, he was a kid of his age group, wanting to shock and wanting to give the middle fingers up to, as the Brits do, two fingers up to society and the rest of the world. And, I think if he kept doing that at this point, that he would look ridiculous. And I salute him for growing into his real self and real skin. And I can't wait to see where he goes with rock and roll from here.
Gotta come from the street in America with rock. You can't come top down like you can in the UK. You got to come up from the bottom up.
100%.
Do you feel that now that you're finally getting that other traction in America?
Yeah, I think what was so interesting about that last record was, I think, my first album, I was 18. I was mad. Brexit had just happened in the UK. The first time I got to vote. And the whole basis of that campaign, young people would the whole population was lied to. So me and my friends really felt misrepresented within music. I think I wrote an album, my first album, I was 18 years old, about what me and my friends are talking about down the pub. And then that went absolutely bananas, out of control, more than I would ever expect. And I think then all these opinions kind of come into play by people who didn't really get you at the beginning anyway. And I think when you kind of, the biggest lesson I've kind of had to learn to navigate when I've reached this point in my life, going into Idols, going into Bloodfest, going into the next music, is kind of me not taking no for an answer and being like, guys, I ain't doing that, or I'm not going to go, and I don't want you to put me with a load of writers because you think they're going to give me this magical thing that you think that I need. When I think the most beautiful thing about kind of space and going home and listening to your peers and listening to actual rock stars who've written actual classics, who've sold actual records, is kind of this sense of purity and this sense of truth of I went home and I was like, what do I want to do? Even if it's the demise of everything, if it's the last stand, if it's the last moment, what do I want to be remembered by? Oh, that was his last thing before he fell off the face of the earth. He died. He went to open a guitar shop or whatever. You know what I'm saying? It's like.
Now, in the second piece I just put in, they talk about credibility and discuss Robbie Williams as kind of a comparison, which is good because Robbie Williams was a pop singer as well that tried to breach over to rock, and it failed miserably in North America because, for a multitude of reasons, which we discuss here, right? It's funny because the direct line comparison between Robbie Williams, it really is an effective comparison because everybody eventually wants to be a rock and roll star. Mariah Carey, I don't know if you read this recently, but Mariah Carey apparently recorded a grunge album at the height of her fame in the 90s and never put it out. And it's apparently coming out soon. And apparently it's actually pretty good, according to what sneak previews people have heard. Like a full-on guitar grunge, she recorded it in 96 or something when grunge was king. And, the point is this. Scratch a pop star, they all want to be rock stars because most people did come up on rock and roll music. And they know that rock has the best audience in terms of, what's the word I'm looking for? Support and loyalty and staying power. You know what I mean? Billy Corgan brings up a point in this thing about Black Sabbath only ever having one chart single, which was Paranoid. Yet they had a career that's 50, 60 years long. That's because the albums and the songs, people can smell the truth. And Black Sabbath were true to form. So, you have to give Dom credit for something. He had a successful pop rock career in UK and the rest of the world. And it's true that he did want to conquer America, and you can see the clip of Ozzy. I'll put it in here.
Well,
Yeah, I have, yeah.
good for you. Conquer America, like.
That's it, man. That's the goal. That's the fucking plan.
You've got to conquer America.
And then the world.
That's the next.
There's Ozzy telling him to go forward and conquer America, right? He knows that rock and roll is what he's going to have to do it. But I believe it's sincere. But he brought up a good point, Yungblud. He said, what do I want to do? He asked himself, what do I want to do, even if it's the start of the demise of everything I've built? I'm paraphrasing. So he was actually taking a chance going into rock because, say that he put it out and it failed miserably. It's hard to go back if you have leaped from pop rock, pansexual, the old image dresses, and to trying to get hard rock, maybe heavy metal, hard rock, rock and roll audience. And they don't accept you. It's like going back to your ex and trying to get her to reignite the flame. It doesn't always work. In fact, it usually doesn't. So let's give him some credit. It worked, but he was taking a chance. He was taking an already successful career and taking a chance on trying something new, something he'd always wanted to do rather. So I salute him for it. It didn't work for Robbie Williams. Robbie Williams' rock stuff was accepted. It went over like a lead balloon here in North America.
And almost reset me in a place where I want my voice to be the leader. I want my sense of imagination to be limitless. And I want to put rock music at the forefront of my brand and my idea, because it's what I've grown up with. I grew up in a guitar shop. My dad and my granddad had guitar shops, and the most beautiful thing about this album is it smells like soldering wire, Tolex glue, and Marshall's own heating. You know what I'm saying? And I think like you can feel that, and it's so interesting. I would say to any artist, it's always beautiful getting lost, because if you can figure out your way back, you become more yourself than ever.
Okay, the next section that we put in here is around the 9-minute mark. I want my voice to be the leader. I want my sense of imagination to be limitless, and I want to put rock at the forefront of my brand and my idea. Okay, and then he talks about, growing up in a rock and roll family with father and grandfather that owned a guitar shop, and growing up around the smell of, the guitar shop, which I know exactly what he's talking about because I've worked in music stores and I've actually worked in a guitar shop. I sold guitars, believe it or not. I can play like power chords, that's about it. But there's that smell, right? Soldering wire and, a Marshall with the tubes that are sizzling, Tolex on amps and glue, and there's a guitar shop smell, and nerds that haven't had a shower in 2 weeks playing Smoke on the Water. Anyway, I digress. As I tend to do. Anywho, moving back on. So yeah, it's really interesting. What a choice of words. I want my voice to be the leader. So in other words, I think he's saying his voice is authentic, regardless of what you think of his choices musically or image-wise. And I believe that that's true. His voice is sincere, and it's the first thing you notice about him, you know what I mean? A sense of imagination to be limitless. Now, here's where I take a little objection, when he calls rock at the forefront of his brand. That sounds a little deliberate. That sounds a little like, a marketing person would say something like that. But to give Dom credit, the industry has changed, and I'm sure the people around him are dropping those terms a lot. You gotta watch out for the brand. You gotta protect the brand. So it's probably become second language to him without even thinking about it. But I will tell you this, back in the day, when I signed a record deal in the mid-90s, if you had talked about your band being a brand in the press, you would have been crucified. They would have called you phony. They would have called you like someone trying, being fake and trying to use rock to succeed. It's a small thing. I don't think it matters that as much these days, because music is so much more open and so much more a melting pot of different styles than it ever has been. So just a small mention. Tell me what you think in the comments.
It's been cool because people can smell the truth. And I think that's why, again, people are starting to resonate in a bigger level than just the Yungblud core with this album. Because everyone's like, oh, wow, this feels like it's onto something here. Maybe it's not fully there yet, but that's cool. It's like,
no, it's always about the journey. It's always about the journey. It's interesting because if you look at any artist journey that you would respect, you usually can see a couple songs before the album where they really have the breakthrough. You kind of see the glimmer. Then there's the breakthrough record, which I feel like you're finally on, which is weird because you've had a lot of success. It's not like you were nobody. But the amount of times I've heard your name coming out of people's mouths in the last 60 days, it's like random people. I mean, the guy parking my car comes up and wants to talk to me about you.
That's crazy.
But I mean, that's how I know you're cracking America.
Yeah.
It's gotta be street up. Where literally the guy, literally the guy parking the car has to see something in you. It's a very egalitarian society in that way. You know, we don't have the classism like you have in the UK. It really is a working class country, even if we've gone away from that.
Okay, moving on to the next piece I just put in there. People can smell the truth. I'm quoting Dom. People can smell the truth. Maybe it's not 100% yet, but they understand that this is cool. And I've said this about him from the beginning, and I believe it to be true. I believe Dom's intentions are good, and I always have. I really do think that he loves rock and roll and wants in. You know, it's a club he wants to belong to, and that his efforts are sincere. And and if you go back and look at my earlier stuff on Yungblud, I've said that from the beginning. I sense that in him, that it is real and it is sincere. It's maybe not fully developed yet, but it's getting there. And the fucking Aerosmith single that they did, oh my God, I can't wait to hear the rest of the EP. I hope it's as good, because that single is great. I agree with Billy Corgan on that. I really think that you can hear his intentions are true, and you can also hear a progression. He's always had some rock elements to his music, and you can hear the shift to classic, more arena-style rock. Even in the older stuff, it is there. And I believe that that's 100% true, and Billy Corgan is right, and I agree.
I've toured America 3 times, but it's never been like this. This is like, and I said that, I think I kind of really did clean house on this album. I had a lot of people telling me a lot of things, and I was like, guys, I really want to just go back to basics, and I really want to play these, like I'm in the Fillmore in Detroit tonight. Like I've never played here. I wanted to go and walk the boards that you did, that Zeppelin did, that Iggy did, that Bowie did. I wanted to go and do America and play like the Palladium and the Fillmores and these real rock and roll venues with this album that is so adherent to the way I believe rock should homage to the past, but be dragged into 2026. We've got
Yungblud talking about playing the classic rock and roll venues where his heroes went, right? I think that's a smart move, and it's a deliberate move, but it doesn't matter. Sometimes deliberate moves need to be made to change the course of your career and to change people's perception of you. That's not, again, that doesn't mean that some fat cat at a label or behind a desk, some Svengali sitting there pulling the strings going, if we put you in the rock market, we can count up the money, That's such a fucking cliche Hollywood interpretation of a rock and roll manager and business people. There's some truth to it, but very, very little, right? So, he said something about that. He was talking about playing places like the Fillmores in the U.S. and these venues where Led Zeppelin and Smashing Pumpkins and so on and forth have played over the years. Where his heroes went to, right? It ties up with the whole Idols theme, too, by the way. But he said, it's an homage to the past, but rock should be dragged into 2026. Brilliant quote, and he's 100% right. So we look to the past for the cues for the future sometimes, When he talked about recording in Hansa Studios, where Iggy Pop and David Bowie produced some of the most classic, music of the 70s. Yeah. Stuff like that you can do. U2 also recorded their Depeche Mode, other bands. You can, tip your hat to that kind of thing. Learn from it. Take what's good from it. Add it to your soup. Because look at Yungblud's music as a soup, okay? And the ingredients are, to have a unique soup, you have unique ingredients that no one else uses. So he's taking ingredients from all these different places. Iggy and Ozzy and emo and leather pants and blah, blah, blah. We talked about this in another episode, which I'll put the link in the description, to build Yungblud. But, it's true within the music and the touring and the marketing as well, right? And I believe that's excellent. I believe he's right that, rock should be dragged into 2026. Brilliant quote.
I think this album was really about confronting legacy, not bowing down to it. I wanted to, because it was the most musically ambitious project we've ever done, I wanted to re-record a live version of the album 3 weeks after we delivered it. Not after we've been on the road for a year. I still wanted that heartbeat when the red light goes on. It's not muscle memory yet. I don't know necessarily how I sing it yet. I think because when you're in the studio, you kind of, it comes out of you for the first time. So the magic is encapsulated. And then 2 years after you've been playing it on the road, it's muscle memory. So you can sing it in your sleep and you know every inflection and you know every breath.
Talking about how he recorded the songs and then went into Hansa Studios, as we said, and did the songs live. I think this is for a documentary. I haven't seen it. I don't even know if it's out. But he was talking about the process. And it's interesting. He's talking about how the songs, when you record them for a release initially, they're new. They've been freshly written, worked on in pre-production with the producer. We get into a room with the producer. You work on the arrangements and people's parts and stuff. And then you record them. But even when you record them, they're still fairly new. Okay? But then you go out and tour them for a year. So then that gets to the fun part, because after he's been singing these songs for a year, the muscle memory takes over. He's not thinking about remembering the lyrics or the the melody for the vocal. He's already got it down. He's sang it 100 times, 200 times. So now he can be creative and have fun with it and sing it just naturally how it comes out. Does that make sense? So talked about how, after muscle memory takes over, you can be more creative with the performance. So I think it's really cool that he took his band into the studio. I think he filmed the process too. He kind of redid the album. I'd like to see that. And if you have seen it, let me know in the comments what you think of it, because I think it's actually a brilliant thing to do. There's an artist right now that I really like called Lola Young. And she actually did, now she's on her promotional tour for her most recent record. You can see her. There's a clip, I forget what it's called, but if I can find it, I'll put it in here and I'll put the link in the description, where she's singing live on the radio, but they're also filming it and putting it on YouTube. And she does some versions of her songs from her more recent album. Now that she's had time to live with them and play them live, her performance of Dealer, the single from her new record, on this program is better than the recorded version. And I stand by that for that very reason, because it's still fresh and new when you record it for an album. And then when you go out and play it a million times, it takes on a new life. And you're able to put more of yourself into it when you're not concentrating on the lyrics, remembering the melody. So let me know what you think about that in the comments below, please. But I think that Lola Young, the version I'll put in here of Dealer, wipes the floor with the version on the album.
I think the biggest issue people have had with me is they've questioned my authenticity, because in today's day and age, there is no mystery anymore. I think when you put out Siamese Dream, you are on MTV and it looks epic and the photographs are dope and everything's crazy, but you don't see Billy in a bathroom scratching his ass every day, do you? On the iPhone in today's, to break through, you have to document everything to even get above the surface. And I think it was hard for people to understand sometimes, to see in a world where everything is so edited, and we all do it. I do it to break through into the 2 millisecond attention span. So I really wanted to create a film that would be a sense of elongation of the imagination, so people could really get to know who I am and then make an honest judgment whether they hate me or they love me. You know what I mean? I think like that's cool.
Yeah.
Okay,
I think
from the 17 minutes 45 seconds mark, he talks about being a musician in today's world. There's no sense of mystery left anymore. You know, everything is watched and seen from the beginning. And, you know, again, I'm paraphrasing what he's trying to say, but he is right. I mean, I can't imagine that must be intense pressure for young artists to be under. There's no sense of mystery left. There's no sense of, you know. Okay, here's an example. I was a rabid Kiss fan from a very young age. I was 8 or 9 years old, okay? Now, with Kiss, every album, essentially, they would put out, it was a new, which, you know, everyone does, a new album, a new title, a new cover. But new costumes, a new stage show, new instruments, and you couldn't wait to see, you know, when they put out the Love Gun album, there was the Love Gun tour with the Love Gun stage show, the Love Gun costumes. The tour before that was the Destroyer tour with a completely different stage show, completely different costumes. It was a really exciting part about being a music fan in the 70s and 80s, was that you couldn't just open your device and see Paul Stanley getting a Starbucks. You know what I mean? Or, you know, David Lee Roth at Costco or whatever. Like, I mean, a lot of the mystery has been taken out of rock and roll because of technology. So a lot of the steps that used to be made in the dark are now being made, you know, and missteps even are being made out in the open via the technology and the society we live in. Let me know what you think about that below.
But I think what was beautiful about the Back to the Beginning show was it was the first time when an older generation of rock fans had something in common with me. And that was our mutual adoration for our genre. I think people went, oh, he's just a rock fan. He's just a Sabbath fan like we all are.
So he talked about Ozzy and the Birmingham show. And he said basically Ozzy told him that, you know, do what you do and people will figure it out after. And I think that's very good advice that Ozzy gave him. You know, one thing that people say about Ozzy Osbourne is that he's a lot more intelligent than he let on to be. People that knew him well said, you know, he was actually a very smart guy. And he had a lot of really strong ideas and opinions. But Ozzy knew that he could get away with things by playing the character of Ozzy in certain situations. And he took advantage of that. And you could tell that Sharon and Ozzy took Dom under their wing. But think about it for a second. They didn't need Dom on that show. It was already sold out. Not only did they get him on, they gave him a prime slot and a prime song to sing, which tells you that they believe they're backing a winning horse, you know? And, you know, the Back to the Beginning show, I believe, was an introduction to older music fans to this young artist that Ozzy believed in. This is Ozzy and Sharon's way of saying, we prove, here's our stamp. Please check this guy out. Give him a chance. And it was successful. Thumbs up to them for doing so.
And I remember at the end of the self-titled album, which was probably the most lost I'd ever been, because I was listening to a lot of people, I really was like, I need to stop now. And I need to figure out if Yungblud was going to be a Ziggy Stardust and if I was going to go on to another thing.
Okay, around the 22-minute, 45-second mark, he discusses the changes of Yungblud, you know, thinking, is it going to be a character like Ziggy Stardust? Or is he going to continue on to, you know, other things and other characters or other versions of himself? Now, if you remember, I did discuss this. I'll put a link in the description. The vlog I did before. And I said that I can see Dom Harrison, not Yungblud, returning to acting at some point in time, because he is a trained actor. Let's remember, he's a very talented young man, and he has an history and experience with acting. And I would support him in that too, because why? Who says he has to do one thing to be authentic? How many musicians we love have done the opposite and gone into acting? And a lot of them fail miserably, but some succeed. We support them, so why wouldn't we? So if Dom Harrison goes out and does movies, I will go see Dom Harrison in films. What do you think about that? You know what to do.
The first time that Yungblud almost became bigger than a 19-year-old kid from the north of England singing about politics, letting his mad ADHD brain be like, I'm going to experiment here, and I'm going to do metal, and I'm going to do rap, and I'm going to do pop, and I'm going to do rock. And it was almost like a celebration of this kind of personified confusion within music that 30,000 of us were feeling.
Okay.
And I was like, oh, Yungblud is bigger than me now. It's this thing. So Dom can go and experiment with different music, or really settle into rock and hard rock, because I think that's what I was setting out to do from the beginning anyway.
Okay, around the 24-minute, 30-second mark, he says something to the degree of, it was almost like this personified confusion with music that we were 30,000 of us were feeling. So I take that to mean that young people today listen to music differently than people of my generation, 30s to 50s, did. Because we grew up in tribes, okay? You were a rocker, or you were a punk rocker, or a mod, or even within heavy metal, there was all these genres and subgenres: thrash, speed, death, metal, you know. And you weren't allowed to cross lines. You were called a poser. Where have we heard that word before? Dumb, right? Whereas kids today, it seems to me, well, I know for a fact, I see it. You know, to them, classic rock isn't just Led Zeppelin, it's Cypress Hill, Nirvana, fucking Snoop Dogg. Oh, there's great music. I think because attention spans are so short now, and everything is, including music, is delivered in small bites and chunks, that people just like songs for songs. So that's why when you go to festivals, particularly in Europe, you'll see, hip hop with metal, and Lollapalooza had a lot to do with that, by the way. It was very groundbreaking in that, for sure. But I think that young people today it's acceptable to dress like a punk and listen to metal and look like an emo or goth kid and like Britney Spears. They don't place as much on the aspect of tribes. I'm using that word ironically because Billy uses it in the interview, talking about at the beginning show all the different tribes, the Tool tribe, the Pumpkins tribe, and so on. But I'm using it in a different thing. So if you're of my age group, in and around 30 to 50, let me know what you think below about that. Do you find that that's true, that it's more open and more permissible now for young people to like all kinds of different music? And I think that Yungblud is definitely a sign of the times when it comes to that.
And Sharon added you to that show. It wasn't just adding you to that show. The tickets were already sold. They brought you on to continue this beautiful thing that we've all built together. And what I've said to so many people, and I'm sure you've been asked 1,000 times about that show too, because it was a magical 3 days.
It was
unbelievable. I mean, we'll talk about that in a second, but the thing that was so beautiful about it is, I said, where in the world can you see somebody in their 20s, 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s, and 70s, and we're all pointed in the same direction?
Completely.
It was the biggest cue to the pop world, and we weren't even trying to do it.
100%. It was mind blowing when we were all there, when everyone was taking the photographs, and I'm kind of there, and you're there, and James Hetfield's there, and Ozzy's there, and Geezer Butler's over there, and Chad Smith's over there, and I'm like, what kind of simulation is this? But it was the most humble, respectful, positive backstage I've ever been amongst. It was wild because it was the rock scene. And I think what was so wild is that concert single-handedly has ignited another spark within the monster of our genre. Because again, generationally, we all have something in common. Yes, it gets a little bit softer as the younger we get because the new generation is more emotional and it's more open and it's a little bit less kind of, but everyone is there for a common reason. And it was like, I felt so honored because I remember getting the call and I thought, oh, they're going to ask me to do The Wizard, or they're going to ask me to do like Nib and like just go like use my pure unfiltered energy. And Sharon goes, we want you to do Changes. And my first thought, I'm like, oh, a piano, me, 50,000 people and 4
Birmingham
million
too,
people.
by the way.
Yeah.
Not London,
Birmingham.
Birmingham.
Yeah, Birmingham. You know, I'm like real people and a live stream at home, nowhere to hide. And I was like, okay, wow. And I think it was one of the craziest experiences in my life because when you are there amongst your idols, all of you were there backstage, and you're kind of the young buck. And then obviously the show was loud and it was heavy and it was energetic. But then I had to go on stage and there is nothing but me and Adam Wakeman's piano and Ozzy's entire legacy pinned in front of all of us. I think it was the most seen I've ever felt by the universe ever. But I think the way I kept it under control was the biggest thing I learned was that I think when you walk on stage, did you know this? Like when there's 20,000 people out there, you're trying to take it in. But when you can take that torch and turn it into a laser beam and sing it to one person, whether that person be yourself or that person be a lover, whether that person be a friend or a brother or a mother or whatever. I sung it to Oz and I just was like, thank you, man. And I feel like I've never been that locked into a performance ever, or like that. I've never felt that in space or on the moon or whatever. You know what, when we talk about when you're a kid, like you fly, I was flying, you know what I mean? And I remember at the end of it, when I was like getting the crowd to sing at the end, I didn't have that planned. It was in the last chorus. I was like, I want him to hear them backstage.
Okay, and the last bit of the first half here of this video I want to discuss is around the 28-minute mark. It's getting back to and elaborating on what we were saying about Sharon and Ozzy backing the horse that is Yungblud, okay? So let's take a look at that. You've got this festival celebrating Black Sabbath, the originators of heavy metal, and all these crazy heavy bands on there, you know, Tool and what did Sharon and Ozzy do? They deliberately took someone they saw as potentially a huge star in hard rock and roll and gave him, as I said, a prime slot and a prime song to sing. You got to remember, Changes, the only hit Sabbath ever had was Paranoid, okay, as in hit single. Ozzy had a hit with the Black Sabbath song Changes later in his career when he covered it with his daughter Kelly, especially in the UK where the show took place. It was, in fact, a bigger hit than Paranoid. So look at this from the mindset of a 15-year-old in England attending this show. The biggest Ozzy Osbourne song you've ever heard was Changes, because it was a number one. It was a Christmas number one, if I'm not mistaken, which is a huge deal in the UK. So what do? They put Dom in a prime slot in the show, singing essentially Ozzy's biggest commercial hit in England, UK, knowing that the crowd would respond like that to him. So they're backing this kid because they believe in him. To me, Sharon's a smart fucking person. A lot of people don't like Sharon Osbourne, but if she were a man, they'd be calling her a brilliant manager, because when she took Ozzy on, he was at the end of his rope. He was a has-been. He'd been fired from Sabbath. He was a fat, raging alcoholic and drug addict. And I'm not speaking ill of the dead. Ozzy says this about himself. She picked him up, dusted him off, and guided him through the industry. 80s, 90s, 2000s, 2010, 2020s, and onward, okay? And now, I don't like some of the things that she's done over the years. I think there's some questionable things about, paying royalties to certain people. She screwed Bob Daisley over pretty badly, I think, and Lee Curtis Lake, and so on and so forth. But that's a whole other vlog, right? But the fact of the matter is that as far as Ozzy is concerned, she was a great manager, and she gave him a very successful career and a very good life. And if she were a man, people would be talking about how big her balls are, right? I bring Sharon into this, and we'll close with this, because she sees something in him and saw something on him, and not only helped Yungblud, but gave him the juiciest spot in the whole show, the juiciest song. Because if you look at the interview, Dom was talking about was like he was hoping to sing, The Wizard or Fairies Wear Boots or something, and Sharon gave him Ozzy's biggest British hit in front of his biggest British audience in the perfect time slot to help him explode. And that show was the beginning of success worldwide for the rock and roller that we now know as Yungblud. Okay, folks, that's all for today. Thank you so much for tuning in. I really appreciate this. And if this is successful and you like it, I'll review part 2 of the conversation with Billy Corgan and Dom Harrison Yungblud next week. And let me know again in the comments what you think. And if you like my new setup with the lighting and the new gimbal, the new stand and everything, if it looks a little more professional. I'm trying not to touch my face and look like a coke addict, as much as some of you seem to think I am. I'm not. I'm boring and old, but I am a little hyperactive. So thanks for tuning in. I do appreciate your support. As always, please subscribe if you haven't already, and press the like button, leave a comment. You can also leave a super thanks, which is a little financial gift. I've only had one so far, but I truly appreciate it. But someone left like $2.50 or something, enough to buy a tea at my local Tim Hortons. So thank you. And also there is my Patreon page, which is $5 Canadian a month, which is $3 American. And I share photos from my career and stories and stuff that I don't share on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, or any other social media. So check that out. Please support the channel. And I'll see you soon. And by the way, coming up, I have an interview with Steven Tyler and Joe Perry's personal assistant, John Bionelli, who's also a tour manager for Aerosmith as a band. This guy has lived an amazing life. He's a friend of mine, and I'm fortunate enough to call him a friend. He's a great guy. He's appearing on The Ramble very soon. So look forward to that one. And until next time, see you next time.